Good afternoon. We're going to give people just a couple more minutes to join us. Thank you for participating in our panel this afternoon. We'll start shortly. Everyone feel free to share their greetings in the chat. The chat is open for use during this panel, and Q&A will also be open if you have any questions that you'd like to pose to our panelists, and we'll do our best to answer as many of those live as possible. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We might have a couple late joiners, but we have 6 wonderful panelists this afternoon, and I really want them all to be able to share as much information as possible with you guys in the hour that we have them. So thank you so much for to our panelists for being here. Just a couple notes to our participants. Like I said earlier, the Q&A is open. You should be able to find that in a little button at the bottom of Zoom if you're not super familiar with Zoom. And chat is enabled so that you can throw a little comment up there as well if you would like. This panel will be recorded, and we will be sharing it out with all the registered participants who registered through My Learning Plan. And you should get that in the next day or two. The recording of that takes a minute to process, but we'll send that out as soon as we've got it ready for you. And I want to say a little thank you to the committee who helped organize this panel and the series that the next 4 panels that will follow this one for our Esports Beyond the Game career series. We're representing BOCES and RICs across the state of New York, from Eastern Suffolk BOCES, Narek, Erie 1 BOCES, Lower Hudson RIC, and Genesee Valley BOCES. So this is a really terrific collaboration for us, and we're really excited that we can bring this group of amazing esports professionals to this panel to speak with us today. So I'm going to start by introducing our panel. We have Ian Mallard, who's an esports broadcast producer. We have David Chen, who is competitive operations coordinator at Esports Engine. We have Yan Chen, who is the senior associate attorney at ESG Law. Devin Rubin, who is technical director at House 3000. Brett Abarvenel, who is the director of research for the International Gaming Institute at University of Nevada in Las Vegas. And Carlos Los Brat, who is an esports commentator. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, thank you, Kelly, for that reminder. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we first just want each of you to tell us a little bit about your role or position and experience with esports. And if I could have David go ahead and start.
All right, thanks everyone. My name is David Chen. I currently work at Esports Engine, which is formerly known as MLG. Right now, my role is a competition operations coordinator, basically running all of the tournaments that we have that come in to our company, whether it be a long-term deal such as the HCS, the Halo Championship Series, or kind of small-time events, just like 1 weekend, 2 weekend events. We're heavily involved in a lot of big titles such as Halo and Call of Duty, and excited to deliver that to the world. Sorry, you're muted there, Emily. I apologize.
Sorry. Devin, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Devin Rubin. I'm part of the local New York City Smash community. We have our organization called House of 3000, and we host weeklies in the local scene, actually coming back this week from our little away from the Omicron stuff. But when professionally, we do a lot of broadcast work, so we'll go to events to set up the production and do all the broadcasts. So like stage setup for the commentators, and just like really cool little broadcast tools, you know, that make things try and make things as like seamless as possible for the commentary talent to kind of like further extend their insight into the game. And yeah.
Thank you. Ian, would you like to?
Yeah, so my name is Ian. I go by Aeon in the esports sphere. I'm a freelance broadcast producer. I have a lot of overlap with the kind of stuff that Devin does. We both work for the Electronic Gaming Federation. I also work for a group called Philly Esports, which does a collegiate series of Rocket League and Smash Brothers. And just as a freelancer, whatever work comes my way, I'm always scrolling through job openings. So just here, there, everywhere, running streams, looping in audio, all that kind of fun stuff.
Carlos.
Hey, so I'm Carlos Brat, but my commentator name is Los, and I'm just a commentator on various different esports titles. I've actually worked with Aeon before. I'm also part of the Electronic Gaming Federation doing work with their Counter-Strike streams on Fridays. But, you know, I work across different titles like Overwatch, Valorant, I'm mostly looking to get into, but of course, Counter-Strike as well. I've done a few different collegiate leagues online, and of course, some locals here in New York City. And I'm just excited about that. And similar to Ian, it's all about scrolling through Twitter, trying to find those opportunities. And that's definitely part of the grind when you're in esports. You're always looking for something new, especially on the broadcast side.
Brett, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Brett Abarvenel. I'm the Director of Research at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas International Gaming Institute. I also have a position at the University of Sydney in Australia. I have been working in this space as a professor studying esports and games in some capacity since about 2010, and played games prior to that, which is how I got into it in the first place. In esports specifically, I work with a lot of different government agencies in addition to the research that I do. So it's not just doing the research, it's also communicating that work to others all around the world. Locally, I'm a co-founding director of the Nevada Esports Alliance, And I also sit on the Nevada Gaming Control Board's Esports Technical Advisory Committee, because of course the true academic way is to just add a bunch of titles after your name and then sound really obnoxious about it. But what we do with the Esports Tech is we advise the Gaming Control Board on different ways to look at and understand integrity in esports, something I know that EGF is also interested in, and help them learn from there as well.
And Ken, our final panelist, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yen. I'm a senior associate attorney at ESG Law. Our law firm is exclusively dedicated to esports practice. We represent most of the major North American esports organizations. Our clients include, for example, like 100 Thieves, Cloud9, Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, and pretty much any other team that you might think of here. We do a lot of their esports related legal work. So for example, like player contracts, we do a lot of that for League of Legends, Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, and pretty much any other esports where our organizations have teams. We do a lot of sponsorship deals. We do a lot of other business to business legal work, just because all of these esports orgs are like legit big companies these days. So they do a lot more than just the competitive gaming work now. So that's where my work is.
As you can see, we have such a broad spectrum of careers represented in the esports field. Of course, just still a small percentage of the careers that we know are related to esports. But if we could, all of you could speak to your background, what you studied in college, if you went to college, or what got you into esports. If we want to just go back the way we came.
Sure, I'm down to take the lead here. I initially studied computer
Sure.
science in college, but obviously currently don't use it much anymore. In college, I initially started our gaming club, and that's kind of how I initially got my roots within the esports world. Prior to that, I was a big card game player, so I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! and actually ended up attending nationals just before I got into college. Was really big into the esports scene, playing competitive card games, and because of that, we started our gaming club. It was, our first meeting was about like 5 students in a dorm room, just trying to get something off the ground, get people to get together and play. And now we have a full-fledged LAN center in our college. Thanks to a bunch of meetings and a lot of hardworking individual students who've helped build that across the years. But after I left college, I actually went and interned at Electronic Gaming Federation, just like a lot of other people here seem to have the connection to. After a couple of months of work there, I became the head of league operations there at Electronic Gaming Federation, while also supporting a lot of grassroots operations, just like Devin and Ian here do, but getting involved with stuff like the local Overwatch scene, and just like helping and supporting LAN centers, just being boots on the ground, just to help out, have some fun, support gaming cultures everywhere. Over time, just due to experience, I applied here to Esports Engine, and I got the role to become a competition operation coordinator.
And I can go second because there's actually a lot of overlap. We're going to be revisiting some topics. I went to Boston University and got a political science degree, which I'm currently not using. It's also where I got my start in esports. I joined the Smash Brothers Club, and that's where I started doing producing. I started running a stream. I started commentating. I started building the graphics on my own, as well as helping run the tournament. So that is kind of where my love for esports and everything under that umbrella started to flourish. After that, or I guess during that, but the next year Overwatch came out, and I started doing volunteer work of like production, observing, commentating for this project called the Overwatch Little League, which is still the funniest idea to me. It was a bunch of fans of existing Overwatch League teams, but all of their teams were funny riffs. So the Boston Uprisings fan team was the Boston Downsizing. So it was a lot of fun. after that, I started looking for more and more places to volunteer. Something that I am going to bring up for the first time, but not for the last time, is a server called Broadcast GG. That's where I find a lot of the job opportunities that I go for. And back then, they actually ran their own streams. So when I would volunteer there, one time I was a commentator, and the person running production for that stream now does observing in the Overwatch League. So you can see just kind of how that funnel goes. As to where I am now, lots of applications sent out. One stuck with Philly Esports. I actually got passed up the first week, and then it turned out that the person that said that they could do it couldn't do it. So they went back to me, and I got the position. And a similar thing with EGF. I actually got recommended to fill in by a friend of mine after I ran the. So this is a little complicated. Boston Uprising ran a collegiate tournament for a couple years, didn't run a stream for the third one, so I ran that stream. Someone saw that and said that I would be a good fit for EGF, and that's how I ended up there.
I guess I can go third. Kind of like a good piggyback on top of that. Yeah. So for the for my how I got into like the scene, basically, I kind of joined the competitive Smash Brothers scene at the time back in 2008 when Smash Brothers Brawl just came out, and was just a competitive player for a few years. One and one of the ways that like how House of 3000 came to be was that like I would host sessions at my place, and so we'd train every Friday. And it was like, oh, we need like a crew name so that when we enter in bracket, we don't get seeded into each other. So that's how House of 3000 started, because we're not very creative. My friend To Kill Sage was like, well, we all go to Devin's house, and his tag is Devin 3000, so let's just be House of 3000. And HO3K looks pretty cool as a prefix, so it kind of works out like that. Come around like 2014 when Smash 4 came out, there was beginning to be a growing, more flourishing scene where things like weeklies was becoming a thing. This wasn't, back in the day, we were lucky to get monthlies. But as the scene was getting larger and larger, there was more frequency of events. And so our local scene, like at the time, wasn't doing, as much as we thought it could be. So then we kind of got into a bit of like the streaming game, being like, hey, let us stream your tournaments, and so that we'll just grow from there, and we can all like cultivate our scene. A few years later, now we're hosting our own events, and I'm using my background in computer science to develop like cool stream tools, like things that are really fun, like instant replays with slow-mo, like general playback, frame advance. You can draw on it, little telestration, stuff like that. My own like overlay system, so that all the cute little animations are all nice and cohesive. Really good art direction, and moving forward after like continuing to host our own events. We start doing work with other organizations. A lot of stuff I'm going to name is going to be like very specific to the Smash community, so forgive me if you've not heard of them, but like there'll be like maybe VG Bootcamp, you've probably heard of. We've done a lot of production for them recently. Like we handled the main production for the Smash World Tour Championships, Glitch 8.5, Glitch Infinite coming up this weekend. We're going to traveling down to Virginia with all of our equipment, and I've also been doing some of the online stuff with Ian for the EGF. Got into that during pandemic, kind of because, wow, we have no locals to host. There's nothing to do in person. And it was really funny. Like the way we got onto that was just that they were down a broadcaster. And this was like at the very beginning of this maybe like a month or two into the pandemic. And they're down a broadcaster, and a friend of mine who had commentated for them, recommended me, and then it was like 2 days notice. It was like, okay, you're gonna stream, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, I have nothing to do. So yeah. So yeah, been in the scene for quite a while. I did go to college for computer science. I was kind of already kind of self-taught like before that, and I also didn't really finish my degree, but but yeah, basically I use broadcast in the esports world to be a combination of my passion of being in the Smash community and also as a developer, being able to make like cool broadcast tools and watch them come to life and people enjoy them. So yeah.
And I do want to say the slow motion highlights Devin runs are the highlight of any night that he's got a
Yeah.
production. They're so funny.
Yeah, they're pretty sick. Thank you.
Okay, so I studied history back in college. That's what my degree was in for SUNY New Paltz. Go Hawks. Woo! I did not have any involvement really in the esports scene when I was out of college. I graduated in 2018. I didn't really know too much about it. I didn't really believe in the idea of how awesome it could be. My college didn't have any real involvement in gaming. There was the Gaming Society Club where they just decided to throw every single console into one room, give them board games, give them card games, and say, okay, have at it without any real structure whatsoever. So I didn't really get into gaming until I had a pretty unique opportunity. I was doing some video content for a financial news media company, and I saw an ad where I could have gotten a job doing the same thing but for esports. So I ended up working on this esports show on Snapchat and Instagram TV called Next Level. I was making content for them. I was doing weekly shows, news shows about esports and gaming. And that was a great experience and exposure to just working in front of the camera. And when it came to gaming, I went to live events. It was awesome. But eventually, there was some funding cut as well as the pandemic hit. So that was no longer a possibility to go in with them and shoot in their studio. So I decided to make a shift. I had already had some experience in journalism. So I started doing gaming journalism. I ended up doing that, writing articles for a couple of different websites, focusing on some gaming guides, which absolutely no fun writing gaming guides. I can tell you that esports is way more interesting in terms of actual journalistic content. And along with that, I found suddenly somehow a chance to do some esports commentary. One of my friends was hosting a Warzone tournament, said, hey, just come in, jump on the mic. Why not? I did it. And it turned out to be something I really enjoyed to do. So I've just focused on that a lot while I'm also at the same time looking for content to work on that I do on the side. So I've been focusing a lot of commentary, had a few lanes that I've gone to as things have opened up recently, and it's pretty awesome. I'm happy to have found it, and I certainly did not expect esports to be what it was when I first dipped my toes into it.
All right, I'll pick up from there in a very different direction. I didn't play a ton of games as a smaller kid. I was very much an outdoor kid. I played soccer all the time. I was even being recruited to go play at the collegiate level when I tore my ACL, which had two huge ramifications in my life. One, I didn't really play competitively that much anymore, and it changed the university I ended up going to. I ended up going to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, where I majored in statistics, a degree that I do still use to this day. I think unusually in this group, excellent. And instead of then having really soccer, I would play from time to time, but I tried to fill my time with other things. And one of the big things that I filled my time with was games. Like David, I loved card games. I played a lot of Magic the Gathering, or MTG, as you'll find more people referring it to. Yay, others shaking their hands. And I also played a lot of poker, which is actually where I ended up meeting the man who is now my husband. And we moved together to Las Vegas, where I am now. I ended up getting my master's and my PhD at University of Nevada, Las Vegas in hospitality administration, which has really in many ways directly led me to my current position. I left after getting my degree and returned in 2016. So I've been in this role since then. where I do exactly what I studied. Really, I research esports and games within the greater scope of sports and entertainment. Las Vegas has really pushed itself forward, not just as, for a long time we're the gambling capital of the world, but really has pushed forward as the entertainment capital of the world, especially now that we've brought in a number of professional sports teams, some of whom actually perform quite well, much frankly to our surprise. And in addition to that, now as one of these major entertainment hubs, how can we bring esports into that space as well? And so that's a big part of what I research and work in here.
Okay, awesome. So I guess it's me now. Basically, I had like two different parts of my life. One is my personal life, which I grew up playing video games. I started playing Magic the Gathering when I was like 8 or 9 or whatever it was, and then like I played that for 25 years. Played pretty much every Blizzard game from like Warcraft up to recent games, including Overwatch and things like that. And then there's like my educational life, which is significantly more boring. I went to college, got a degree in economics, didn't use that, and went to law school. Okay, I use my law degree now, but did that for another 3 years. Graduated in 2011, where there wasn't really like any esports law stuff going on. Like there was actually, like esports was still kind of growing during that time, but there's really not much to do in terms of like at least the law aspect of it. So I did like generic law stuff for the next 10 years of trial and appellate litigation, like all of that cool stuff. But throughout that entire time, I was basically like, okay, I'm really interested in video game stuff, esports stuff, and I was trying to figure out like how do I actually like get back into that industry and move my career in a direction where I would actually be like super interested and excited about what I do on a daily basis and the clients that I represent and all of that stuff. The awesome thing is in like 2017 or 2018. Bryce Blum started ESG Law. It was just him at the time. He was basically like the first attorney to basically start an esports law practice, and he grew the firm to I think it was like five attorneys by the time that I applied last year, and I was lucky enough to get in. It's still a very small firm. We're only like a handful of attorneys here. Esports law in general is still a relatively small field, but it is definitely growing. So that's kind of where I got to where I am, how I got to where I am. Just being interested in video games and esports, and then trying to figure out like how I get into it. Which is I think a little different from like half of this panel, or maybe more, because I just like grew up in a I grew up and went to school in like a situation where there just like isn't that much esports going on until I think it was when I got to law school, there was finally like collegiate esports to some degree going on, and I managed to like sneak my way in, even though like pretty much everyone else was an undergrad, and I was like, yeah, we can allow you to play even though you're in law school and not really an undergrad. But that's so it was like until then there wasn't that much to do like professionally in esports, I don't think, as far as what I was doing anyway.
My boss laments all the time that he grew up at the wrong time, because if he was a little bit younger, he definitely would have had like a career in esports. Thank you so much for sharing all of that terrific information. And we have a question that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask anyway, but one of our attendees asked as well. If you have advice for students or advice for teachers who want to support students who are interested in pursuing a career in esports, what would that advice for directly to students or to teachers be?
I guess I should probably start this one off. So, it really depends on getting started. I think getting started, you just have to get out there, throw yourself into it. If your own school already has an esports program, or maybe like an esports team that competes, try and stream their matches and have that one student go out there and do some commentary on the matchup. The only way that you can actually start it is by starting it, essentially. Everyone's going to be rough in the beginning. I recently looked at one of my earlier reels, and it was terrible. But you just have to get started, record some games, get over their matches, and if you don't have a program that is actively competing, so you don't have access to VODs, I know for Valorant, it is the Nerd Street Gamers pages. They have a few VODs, which is video on demand, so previously streamed events that don't have any other commentators speaking over it. So it's just the observer. You don't have to worry about talking over other commentators. Your VODs can be clean. The reels can be just you speaking into it. And it's a good way to get some practice, especially since it has some of the highest level players. So the plays will be great. It's always going to be exciting. And it's a good way to have that started. But if you do have a team that's competing, just try and work in conjunction with them. Have somebody stream their scrimmages with other schools, other squads, and get on the mic. Give it a shot.
And I can
Yeah.
pick up from there. Sorry, was someone else going to talk?
I was, but you go ahead. I'll follow up.
So I want to come at it from like a school support kind of standpoint. When I went to Boston University, they did not have an esports program. It was split into like 2 or 3 different clubs. There was the Smash Brothers club that had fractured into like half club for each game. Then there was the esports club that did Overwatch and League of Legends and Valorant. I think it's important for a school to have explicit support as opposed to just a tacit consent. And that includes having a room, having equipment, and having direct contact with a teacher or staff member that can relay up to the higher ups and talk to the students. I think it's also important for students to run tournaments on their own, run production and cast. Just like Los was saying, if your esports teams are in tournaments, like say you're in the NECC or the NACE, there are a bunch of matches that you can cast for your school. That'll get viewers from your school or the other school. But what's most important is that it's free practice for your own team. And then the last thing I would say is, if possible, have a budget for coaching, because that can really level up the type of play that your esports teams will have.
Ian, that's the recorded bit that some of our coaches are going to play back to their administrators.
Yeah, okay, I'll go next. So mine mostly comes from like more of a grassroots point of view. Like I said, I've been in the community, like the Smash community. Everything in fighting games is usually very grassroots. I would say that I'll try and touch it on 2 points. One, if you're just trying to get into broadcasting or commentating, especially commentating, if you have a local scene, if you're able to find that there's a community local to you, go out to the events, talk to the people there. Gaming communities, really just any community, like when everyone's just trying to show up together to do what they love, it's always going to be very welcoming, hopefully, right? And so when it comes to let's see, yeah, so when it comes to commentary, one of the things I would want to say, when you're just trying to figure out what you want to do, right? For commentary, figure out what's the best fit, whether it's color versus play-by-play. Obviously you want to be good at all of them, but it's fine to have specialty and stuff like that. So trying to hone those skills to grow as a caster. So kind of so growing yourself as a caster, something that could be useful in an education point would be commentary coaching. Really being able to analyze what you talked about in that event that you commentated, and saying oh, okay, I could have done that better, or maybe you misspoke, or just you could have gone into more detail, or it could have been summed up. There's always going to be a lot of little details when it comes to broadcast, streaming itself. If you're doing more of I would say a more traditional, I'm not sure, a more traditional type of broadcast where you're the producer doing all the scene switching, you're behind the buttons, right? You're driving it. I would say one of the first things to make sure is that you have an attention to detail. Like you need to look at all these minor things and like know where that they should apply. One of the biggest things to just start out is just like making sure you have proper audio, because if it sounds bad, people tune out because it sounds bad. Like they won't even watch it on mute unless the content is really, really intense. It's just poof, gone. But yeah, and then after that, just really good like proper scene switching, and yeah, honestly, also I know that we're in the gaming world in the esports, but watch actual sports broadcasts. Very important. They've been doing it for far longer than we have, and there is so much overlap in terms of like how scene switching and how overlays and like all these things. Like obviously this is our own wheel to invent, but it has been done similar. So like just being able to study those things is invaluable, I actually kind of messed up and missed the Super Bowl this weekend. I was like, oh, I should have watched that, just always little things that you can pick up, Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to mention? Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Like for the broadcast side, making sure you have like good execution, being able to pay attention for long periods of time, and yeah, and you don't also have to worry about like super expensive equipment. Everything scales. Production is a black hole of money, so you don't have to start super high. The only thing I would say that you start kind of high-ish, like when you're starting off with like a bone budget, is just audio. Yeah, you got to get the $200 headset and like maybe a cheapo mixer, but the headset's got to be good. Other than that, outside of that, everything can be done very very cheaply. But yeah, yeah, growing as commentator, growing as a broadcaster. Go to your local scenes if you don't have a school program for it, and if you do, you can apply all of these things as well.
Wanted to jump in here next. These guys spoke a lot of great stuff, especially I would say Devin making a point about just going out and getting involved. Network, that is probably one of the biggest things in esports. Knowing people around you, a high tide raises all ships, and having friends or just other like-minded people who are very interested in what you're doing and are very supportive has always helped me, has probably helped every single person in this room, whether it's making a connection to EGF to help run a broadcast because my friend knew them, or et cetera, right? Just getting out there and making your name heard, and like Lo said, just getting some practice under your belt. Sometimes it's hard, especially with like schools that are just starting their esports programs, or are more vested in sports. Like Devin said, maybe just try to hop on and like, is there no one casting your local, your school sports team? Try to cast a football game. There are definitely a lot of parallels that you can get there. I think personally for me, when I was first getting into esports, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just struggling, but I knew I wanted to be in the gaming space. I was so super fortunate to land at EGF, so to get a bunch of experience, but a lot of just general business things are reflective in esports, whether it be sales, whether it be broadcasting and entertainment, content creation, lawyers, right? Like everything is needed, and be prepared to just jump in and just try to dedicate yourself, because a lot of people want gaming jobs. It's fun, it's great, the culture is great, but I think here I would say commitment and like trying to like specialize your skills as you're going further down your career path.
Yeah, I think I'd like to jump in because to kind of follow up on that, David just mentioned something really important, which is like esports is basically like an entire industry by itself now. It's basically like a combination of like sports and entertainment, right? Like, so there's tons of different types of jobs that a student can get in esports. So I think my advice for students specifically would be like, think about like the kind of stuff that you're interested in doing, and then think about how that ties into esports. So if you're interested in like legal work, for example, like, yeah, you're still going to have to go through 4 years of college and then 3 years of law school, and that's going to kind of suck possibly. But after, like, you can still like do all the networking stuff in esports, get to know everyone in the space, go out, meet people that are part of esports organizations, that are part of, publishers like Riot or Activision Blizzard, things like that. And then once you have your law degree and you talk to lawyers in the space, or if a job comes up at one of these organizations and happen to know someone there, that's a foot in the door. Similarly, like if you want to go into sales partnerships, or if you want to do like other like business type stuff, then that still ties into esports, because organizations need that kind of work, right? You don't have to like only be a caster, or only be a competitive player, or something like that to be able to get into esports. And then the other half of my advice here for like schools and teachers is actually like put in resources for esports at your school. Like seriously, like I think Ian might have said this earlier, but it's just like you can't just like, okay, we'll let you start an esports club and then like go do whatever you want with it. Like you actually need like staff or teacher support there. You need like that person to kind of like help the students get opportunities for either competitions, or just like looking for ways to get them connected out in the esports industry. We probably need to put in some monetary resources into esports, especially like getting gaming rigs set up, gaming like good audio and headsets for people that do want to do the broadcasting and the work and things like that. So I think putting in those kinds of resources and support behind your students, and then like encouraging them to seek out what they're interested in esports, and then figure out ways to support them as they're pursuing their interests is really important.
I'll hop in as a fellow educator here. I'm guessing a lot of attendees will empathize that I fully recognize that it's a lot easier for us to say you need to put resources, people, time, and money toward esports than it is to actually get people, time, and money toward these things. It's not something that's readily available for esports. It's also not something that's readily available for a bunch of other interests that students often have. So I'll speak, having said that, I'll speak more to some of the things that I do. For example, like you guys, I have people who come to my office all the time asking about careers in esports. And the very first thing I always say when someone says, I want to work in esports, I say, yes, that's awesome. I'm very excited. What do you want to do in esports? Because I think that's the most important next question. And Yen really touched on all of this, and David as well, which is that there's so many different things that you can do in this space. And it's not just esports, it's also gaming, as David mentioned, because this is incredibly widespread, right? And not just sales and production, we're also talking about game development. If you want to major in computer science and then go on and create games, it's not something where you have to work with a AAA producer or a developer. You can go and work with an indie firm, or you can even create your own games. So we, for example, at IGI, we have a subcenter called the Center for Gaming Innovation, and it's all about producing games and game development and selling patents that come from these games. There are tons of other jobs as well. And I encourage truly, now you hear everybody here say, well, I didn't really use my major. They're wrong, they're using it, they just don't realize it. So for example, like let's say that you want to work in esports and you're really interested in the global aspect of esports. That's perfect. A major like anthropology or political science or history is excellent for that, because you're going to get all sorts of information and understanding of how people work together or don't work together well, and see then how different games are popular in different places. So mobile games, for example, are incredibly popular in Southeast Asia. And only now are we really starting to see that popularity grow in the West. Well, if that's something that you're interested in, then you need to be aware of what sort of cultural elements come into play with mobile gaming, and then how that will exist in different things like broadcast or sales. If you want to be an esports journalist, that is an incredibly popular budding career that I have a lot of students interested in who come into my office, and all of these different things are possible. So I would recommend not just looking for esports programs, especially as they're seeking out perhaps collegiate placement, but also things where they can then apply that to esports. So Devin mentioned, for example, watching sports and sports broadcast. At UNLV, I'll just keep using our example because why not? We have the Sports Research and Innovation Initiative, and within it, we have a bunch of different pillars for different areas of research and study. And one of those is esport. Here we happen to have grouped it in with sport and entertainment. It might be in a different place elsewhere. Sometimes esports falls underneath a computer science department. Some places it falls underneath College of Liberal Arts. So what I'd recommend is, I'll just continue on Yen's advice to not just look for the things that you're already interested in, but then when you're looking for example, universities and potential careers beyond that, look for a place where esports connects with what you're interested in. If you're interested in computer science, look for a place where esports is part of the computer science department, or game development is part of that department. And all of these different things then can come together, and you can find, especially as this continues to grow in popularity, there's always now, it seems like, a place where your interest combines with esports in some capacity. And it's just a matter of finding where that is.
Wow, this was such great advice from all of you, and such terrific different perspectives. Thank you so much. We had a couple people answer this in the chat, I think, but someone asked for places that students could look for career opportunities, and a website was mentioned. And then there was another question about finding esports events around the country, if there's a central location. I don't know if any of you have a suggestion for that. And I also,
Yeah, I think Devin might.
okay,
It's hard.
tough.
It's really fractured. You know, when you're in, like, if you, again, I'll speak from like mainly just like fighting games and Smash Brothers. Like, once you're in the community, the main way to talk about it is unfortunately Twitter, and you know, you can try and find like who are the lead organizers like for large events, you know, like Genesis, one of the largest and longest running tournaments in the Smash scene, you know, coming up in April, right? Like, you follow Genesis on Twitter, or follow VG Bootcamp on Twitter, and you'll find out, you know, about Glitch next week, or Pound coming up in April and stuff like that. As far as like big unifying things, it's a little difficult in the fighting game scene. It's kind of a, if you know, you know. When you go to local scenes, once you go, if you're able to find a local, then you pretty much end up like you're in the community. So if you just ask anybody like what's going on and stuff like that, as far as like generally available resources or calendars, at least for fighting games, kind of difficult. Sorry.
Yeah, resources for time have always just been so hard to find, just because every, you know, the scope of different events and just the popularity of different games is just really tough overall. Specifically locally, I would just start checking, you know, what's your local convention center hosting? What's your local, if there's an internet cafe or like a board game shop or like a card game shop, that's probably where I would start. Find people who are like-minded, you know, interested in the games that you're interested in, and that's how you would connect further.
If anybody needs one right now, if you're interested in Smash, you just come down to Xeno Zero, 21 Ludlow Street, New York, Chinatown, Manhattan. That's your in. You can see me there.
And then I'm going to say what I thought Devin was going to say, because while things are pretty fractured, I would say there's 3 major websites that have tournaments. Smash.gg is far and away the biggest one for Smash and fighting games. The other two are kind of more centered around first-person shooters, Rainbow Six, Valorant, Overwatch. That's Face It and Battlefy. Kind of good luck finding places elsewhere, but those would be the three that I would start with.
I also want to jump back to talking about Twitter. Twitter really is a place where you could try and find gigs, especially if you're starting out in the broadcast sense. You have to just DM, you have to shamelessly plug yourself and DM people. I would always go, hey, I'm Los. I'm an experienced esports commentator. And just like give your elevator pitch, copy and paste it. Make sure you put the right organization's name when you do it, because you don't want to get knocked out in a round like that. But that's really how it goes for starting off. That's how I found a majority of the gigs that I'm consistent with. I just DM somebody on Twitter. If it's not the social media manager, you got to find someone who is followed by that page, and they say like event manager or talent coordinator. You ask them like, hey, do you need anyone? I'm really good. Give me a chance. Don't say give me a chance. I'm really good. I'll make your event amazing. And it kind of starts off that. Once you get in, then you try and network, make yourself look as good as possible. They might remember you for another event. Maybe a producer goes on to a different event, says, oh, I remember Los. They were really good. Oh, I remember Devin. He was great to work with. I remember Ian. Loved the production. And then it kind of starts to snowball from there. It doesn't really open up like that. It does take a lot of work based off of how fractured things are.
But yeah, shoot all your shots is the takeaway from that. Just shoot them all out.
Yeah, the only other website that I have for esports events, and I don't know how useful it is for any other event. The only thing I play now is Teamfight Tactics, is challengermode.com. I mean, like Aegis Esports posts their like weekly tournaments there. There are a couple of other tournaments that have happened there that I've participated in, but that's the one resource that I have there. Apparently they do have like other games like up there, but I just haven't like figured out if those are legit or not.
All right, great. I just wanted to address really quick. A bunch of you have brought up the fact that there's a lot of connections with EGF. And that's because when I started this journey of trying to get panelists, I started with Jennifer Hinton, who's at the RIT Magic Center. And she gave me Tyler Schrott's name. And when I spoke to him, he was like, oh, I've got panelists for you. And he sent me a mega list of people to contact for all of our panels. So that's where the EGF correlation came from.
Shout out to Tyler.
Yeah, it's all because of Tyler. So who is amazing. And I've gotten a little glimpse, even though I'm not in the esports world at all. And I think that all of our attendees are going to get that glimpse from virtually meeting all of you. And you touched on it a little bit, the welcoming nature of this community and just the generosity of time and how many of you got back to me so quickly and were like right on board with participating in this panel is just, it speaks volumes to the culture around this esports community that I think is just so positive, and we want to see more of it in our schools in New York State. So we've only got about 5 minutes left, so we don't have enough time to get like all the way back around with a question. But do any of you have any final thoughts or comments that you want to share with the New York State educators?
I think one thing, I think it was Yen who brought this up, was the really cool thing about esports, or just like really any large entertainment industry, is that like what you see is so little a part of the industry, you know. So like that major that you have, that you enjoy, before you discovered the esports world can still be applied to that industry, whether it be law, whether outside, like other than just like broadcast and casters. Those are the people that you see immediately, so like it's the more obvious stuff. But like sales, set design, graphic design, development, like all of these things cast such a wide net, and so I think the biggest thing, the biggest help would be that if you're interested in this industry, you need to translate and say, that degree or that major you're in still applies to this, and here's how you can still do your part in that industry with your skills or the skills that you are learning in college, whatever major you have, So I would say like drawing better lines to show the connections between every single kind of major and how it can apply to this entire industry, because it's not just like 2 or 3 different positions. There's so much planning that I can't begin to want to even have anything to do with, like I want to do the broadcast stuff, but just drawing those parallels for every industry and showing all overlap, I think is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think all you need to really do is like go on to something like Riot Games career site, and then just like you can see like they have like hundreds of openings in like every single like field imaginable really in this space. And then like, and that's just for Riot, right? Like they're mostly a video game developer, which has an esports aspect to it. If you go to like the various esports organizations, they'll have like all of their stuff as well. I did see a question pop up in the chat. I'm happy to like start off with answering this one in terms of like whether students should choose what they want to study first and then like later look at how it's related to esports. I think that's a good way to look at it. I think there's definitely some esports specific things where like if like you absolutely want to do broadcasting in esports, or if you want to like cast esports games in League of Legends or something, or if you're like already super good in your challenger like in TFT and you want to like play TFT as your career or something like that, like that's super specific, and that's something that like you can specifically shoot for that. But in terms of other more general careers, I think it is a good way to go about it. It's like, okay, I mean, if you're interested in esports and you're interested in pursuing a legal career, I think you should, try your best to like combine both, but you want to be a lawyer first. And then like, once you have your law degree, you want to like get into esports law. There's like multiple ways to go about that. I'm happy to talk more to anyone that's like super interested in that particular aspect, but it's like esports law itself is not like massive. So like a lot of advice that I give to current law students and like junior lawyers right now is like, just get into something that's adjacent. So for example, like intellectual property law or like contracts law or just like general transactions practice. And then as you're doing that type of work, like network in the esports industry, so that when an opening comes up somewhere, then you have a foot in the door, and you also have like experience that's relevant to that particular job, right? So I think that's somewhat similar advice to students, where it's like, okay, well, you're interested in this particular field, get experience, like get your education and experience in that field, and then like figure out how you can get into esports with that.
Yeah, to bounce off of what Yen said, I think definitely a lot more of the business-minded careers like finance or law, those definitely, I would say, approach career first before looking into the esports realm. That way you can develop a lot more of what you're learning overall, especially for stuff like if you're trying to become a player or like a content producer. A lot of that stuff happens just like immediately, right? When you're in like your teens to like like your young 30s, that's like the opportune time to be a player. For League of Legends players, I don't think their peak has gone past like 28 or something like that. So if they're already top of the ladder, on playing some of these high mechanical skill required games, I would say if they're interested, let them shoot their shot. But in terms of most other careers, definitely you can branch out and learn a lot more, at doing finance at like another company before jumping into the esports realm.
And David mentioned the power of networking, and everybody who's attending this now has 6 new people in their network. So please ask us.
Thank you so much to all of you for joining us and sharing such wisdom and terrific advice with us today. I know you're going to get a bunch of chat thank yous, but we're just so appreciative of your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. If anyone is local to New York City, come on down to Chinatown if you want to play some Smash Brothers. I'm shooting my shot right here, right?
Or get a
but
hands-on
honestly,
experience in the esports realm to take
seriously.
home to your school.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to see how we do it and how you can translate it over, if you're in the New York City area, definitely reach out to us at House of 3000 or Devin at house3000.nyc if anyone wants to email me directly.
Shameless DMs, right,
Yeah.
Los?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Always send the DMs, even if you don't get a response. You got to send it anyway, because maybe they're just busy. Maybe they'll read it later. You might have something pop up later on. You never know.
That's
It's
how
also
I got in touch with most of you, right?
Yeah.
Shameless DMs.
it's good cover letter practice when looking for work. That's exactly what it is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will send an email, as Kelly's saying in the chat, we'll send an email follow up with a link to the recording for anyone who registered. Thank you so much for attending. All right. Have a terrific day.
Okay. See
Have
you,
a good one,
everyone.
everybody.